Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the Patek Philippe 3970P, also known as the 3970EP. This is a third series 3970 in platinum that you can see and purchase on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full listing for this watch for sale, with additional accessories included in the sale, high-resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this Patek Philippe 3970EP or 3970 3rd series. Now, the watch on my wrist is traditionally sized, and delightfully so, I must say. Close your eyes, you'd swear it's bigger simply because it weighs so much. But in fact, at 36.5 millimeters across the round of the case, this is both a tribute to Patek Philippe's watchmaking prowess in complicated watches and an enduring love letter to the 20th century's standard of men's dress watch sizing. Now, 36.5 across the round of the case does not include the crown or the vintage pump style pushers. In terms of thickness, the watch is 12.9 millimeters thick, but with a generously sloped concave bezel, it will slide underneath any dress cuff. It's really more compact than its rather pot-shaped profile would suggest. This one sits low on the wrist. It also sits nicely centered on the wrist, as at only 43.5 millimeters lug-to-lug, I can tell you that it wears a treat on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, and I can even assure you that if your wrist is as small as 13 centimeters in circumference, you're going to be able to wear this one with the appearance of proportion and security. It is smaller than the 5970 that followed it, and it is also smaller than the 2499 that preceded it. So this is the buy if you want a compact Patek Philippe Perpetual calendar chronograph with plenty of collectible upside. Now, you'll note the case is beautifully assembled with welded lugs, and the level of finishing is exceptional in that evidence of the weld is removed after the two are joined, and it's seamless. You can't see any evidence that soldering took place. Beautifully finished on the inside and out. This is the definition of handcrafted. Now, the case does feature a number of strong character lines. As you can see, the mid-case joins at top and bottom with hard edges to the case back and the bezel, and there's a subtle fluting to the lugs that tapers as it approaches the termination point. So the case is small, but it packs a lot of detail and nuance. The dial itself, though packed with information, is remarkably balanced and legible. One of the characteristic features of the third series of the 3970, aside from the fact that there are no visible hallmarks on the flanks of the case or lugs, that's a second series thing that you won't see here. The watch features dart-style faceted indices, and instead of leaf hands, you have these pointed baton-style hands, distinctive of the third series. You'll also note that there's no color contrast between the center of the concentric scales at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, unlike the first generation of this model. So it's beautifully balanced, and it features a handsome and distinctive assembly of white gold appliques and hands, but it's also easy to read. You have in the aperture at 12 o'clock, the day, the month. You have the radial date, easy to read, again, at 6 o'clock, and far less cluttered than the contemporary 5270 reference. As you can see, everything fits in this compact dimension. You have a 24-hour indicator inside constant seconds at 9 o'clock. The purpose is to give you a purchase on the danger zone, during which you should not attempt to set the calendar. All calendar setting functions accomplished with the pusher adjusters. So you have that 24-hour indicator to give you AM, PM. You have the day, the date, and the month. You have the leap year cycle indicator inside of the register for chronograph minutes at 3 o'clock, and you have an opaline silver dial. Patek Philippe opaline being essentially a very subtle granular metallic silver that's slightly off-white, so not quite as cold as white or silver itself. The opaline is a little bit different and very distinctive of this manufacturer. You have a crescent-style moon phase that adds a welcome shock of color at 6 o'clock, and then you have a beautifully blackened lancet-style counterweighted chronograph seconds hand. And note the slow tick. You can almost count them individually. That's the benefit of having an enormous slow-beating balance, this being an 18,000 vibration per hour beat rate. Very traditional. It almost looks like a pocket watch chugging away, and it's an absolute pleasure. Now, the watch also feels a little bit like a pocket watch when you cycle the chronograph and you wind the timepiece. The current 5270 features winding that is so smooth and refined that the detents are virtually imperceptible. Now, some will appreciate that level of extreme refinement and the elevation of the watchmaker's art to a different tactile sensation than we've come to associate with manual wind haute de gamme calibers, but most will simply prefer the older style where you can feel the individual detents, not in a gritty fashion, but in a crisp fashion. Make no mistake, this is old school. Now, the watch also features large, standout pump-style pushers to complete the vintage aesthetic. The force is strong with this one, and it continues on the case back. You can see that balance beating away. I need to wind this one a little bit. You can see that balance beating away in big chugging sweeps. Of course, the balance itself almost 1/3 the diameter of the caliper. This is how precision was attained in old school movements. Rather than having a high beat rate, have a huge high inertia balance, and that is present and correct. Now, though based on the Lemania 2310 Abauche, this movement is extensively modified by Patek Philippe, starting with their proprietary Gyromax free-sprung balance architecture. It takes and holds a precise regulation better than a mobile stud index, and then it retains it in the face of bumps, disruptions, vibrations, and shocks on the wrist. Of course, a Breguet overcoil, handmade, ensures concentric beating in any position, so it helps to add to the resistance to gravitational or positionally induced timing deviation. That's why you have the Breguet overcoil. Now watch this. As I cycle the chronograph, you'll note the levers and the horns of the chronograph mechanism interacting with the capped column wheel. The capped column wheel, a aesthetic tradition of Geneva watchmaking, and this is the older Geneva hallmark, as you can see on the balance cock, the more romantic standard. No loss of quality with the modern Patek Philippe seal, but this is just a little bit more charming and rooted in the traditions of the place where this watch originated. The capped column wheel is beautiful, but it also helps to avoid the ejection of the levers from the crenellated towers of the wheel in the case that the chronograph may be shocked or bumped or disrupted to such an extent that the mechanism moves around. The capped column wheel helps to keep the levers planted inside the wheel structure. You'll also note that there is a lateral clutch, and you can see it moving in and out. Now it's out, the chronograph's not running. Now it's in, and you can see the intermediate driving wheel is actually driving the chronograph center wheel. You'll also notice that the entire chronograph drivetrain, the lateral yoke that moves in and out, features jewels. So with the driving wheel and the intermediate wheel both borne on jeweled pivots, you see the level of refinement Patek has added to this old school, antiquated architecture to help reduce friction in the system. Most watches that use a version of this, including the Moon watch, or the pre-Moon watch I should say, feature bushings rather than jewels in that application. Beautifully finished and executed. You can see the number of black polished surfaces, so the highest standard of optical finish. You can always detect that by turning a few degrees with respect to the light source. Anything that turns perfectly black is poly noir, exceptionally difficult to execute. Now you can also see from this angle how the edge of every bridge and lever lights up with a gorgeous mirrored anglage, rounded, not sheer, executed by hand on all of these surfaces. You'll also note if I move it through the light, you can see the richly textured Côte de Genève perfectly aligned across the bridges. This is as good as it gets, manually wound with a 48-hour power reserve, water resistant to 30 meters, but even then I wouldn't test the theory. Nevertheless, this is the Patek Philippe 3970EP for étanche in platinum, 36.5 millimeters, a collector's prospect for the future that you can wear every day. See it and own it on our website.